Everyone this morning. I'm Jeff Henwood, Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy with Alberta Municipalities, and just like to welcome you to our Municipalities and Industry Collaboration and Grants Explained. So this is the fourth in our series of webinars. To recap, back in October, we had Unlocking the Secret of Government Grants. In December, we had Building Your Grant Calendar. In February, we had Meeting Grant Agencies, and based on the poll we conducted at the end of that meeting, we decided on the topic for today's meeting. All of the previous ones, and this one will be recorded, so I don't know if you want to hit record there, David, and you'll be able to check them out afterwards if you so desire, or if you missed one in the past. And so again, today we are joined by David Kincaid of Alberta Business Grants. We also have Isabel Tarasco, Technology Investment Lead with Emissions Reduction Alberta, and Vicki Lightbrown, Director, Water Innovation Program with Alberta Innovates. We will have a time for a Q&A after the presentations, so please throw your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen rather than in the chat. And with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. I am just loading up in the chat, everybody, for your convenience, the biographies of our speakers. So you can just read those right there. I also put the problem statement, and I've got just a couple other links I want you to see. As Jeff mentioned, this is part of a three-part series, and here are the recordings for those three talks. So we started out with like grants in your municipality, then we did building your grant calendar, and we did meeting grant agencies. And as Jeff mentioned, we did a poll, and this was the number one talk that came up out of that. So Jeff, thanks again for doing this, and especially with ABmunis, as well as, of course, our guest speakers with Alberta Innovates, Vicki and Isabella with Emissions Reduction Alberta. I have 5 things in 5 minutes, and then I'm turning it over to them. And I've already done 2 of them, which was thank yous and sharing with you the 4-part series. The third part is this problem statement. Like, what are you doing here? So this is a bit more detailed than we've typically done. So if you open up the problem statement, I'm also going to share my screen for a moment. I just want you to read this right here. Can you see that, Jeff? Okay. It would be, you're muted, Jeff. Okay, perfect.
Good on my end.
Okay. Have a read of this. So this is from a program guide. Okay, with that, again, that statement is in the chat if you need it. But the idea is, your municipality, you've got this water or wastewater solution or problem, and you want to try out a new technology. How do you go about doing that? How do you find the technology? How does the funding work around that? It's pretty complex. I mean, pretty detailed information. But if you can kind of master it, it's pretty cool. So we're very lucky to have Alberta Innovates and Emissions Reduction Alberta here. That's going to be the problem statement. So the idea of this technology, new innovation, could be emission reductions, could be water saving technologies with municipalities. And for some of you, this will be maybe kind of new. So I wanted to just share with you a resource in the chat right now, is the technology readiness level scale. For those of you that have never heard of it, I just wanted to give you some quick context, and it's essentially the language they use. So if you've never heard of it before, don't be intimidated, but the idea is it's a 1 to 9 scale, and further you are down the scale, it's like an idea you have. So you have an idea you had, you come up with a plan, maybe a study, and then you work on the prototype, and then you figure out the prototype, and then you would like demonstrate or a pilot project further on down the line towards commercialization. And so that innovation process, that idea from an idea in your head, this engineer comes up with this idea for this technology, to piloting actually with the first customer, is sort of the innovation space that we're getting into today. And so Alberta Innovates and Emission Reduction Alberta will fund along that line. And so don't get overwhelmed, but I just wanted to clarify, when you hear words like prototype, that will be sort of like in the middle of the technology readiness level scale. When you hear pilot study, or sorry, pilot project, that would be, you know, towards the 8, 7, 8, 9 on the TRL. So that's just some basic language that you need to you know, basically understand to follow along. And again, for those of you who are very familiar with this, thank you for your patience on that. Now, with that, I just wanted to say we are getting a bit more complex here, but you can do it. Like, don't be discouraged. There's a tremendous opportunity here. And there's, you know, Jeff, we probably both relate to this, but there's a few things in your career that you can say, wow, I did something really cool throughout my career. You know, there's like 2 or 3 kind of good ones. And this is kind of what it's getting into. It can be a huge impact for your community, but also just for you personally. You'd be like, wow, you know what? At this job, at this time, I did this. And that's what we're talking about today. So things that can really move the needle for you. Now, so you can do this, all right? Lastly, I want to, before we turn it over to Vicky, we like to do a poll just to give our speakers an idea of, you know, who you are and where you are, where you're at. So, or which organizations you represent. So I'm going to launch a poll. I'll share all these results with you, but they really help our speaker, you know, talk to you so they know where we're at. So I'm going to launch it now. You should see that popping up on your device. If you could please take a moment just to answer that, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. We've still got a few left. It's pretty cool. It goes in real time, so I can see we're at about 72%. So we've got 35 responses, and I will end this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This poll is ended. And now I'm going to share the results with you. Have a look. So if you ever won a grant before, 2/3 of you have. Yeah, I was thinking that we'd have some people with some more years experience. I know you're probably loving this because I was too in terms of where we're at. But we do have 4 of 10 of you, or 40% or 42%, are less than 2 years experience. So it's kind of a mix of some pros. So please have patience with us as we help those new people come along. Oh, 1/3 of people have collaborated. Great. I am going to, Jeff, if you don't mind, can you take a photo of that survey? This, I find Zoom's feature, believe it or not, is not as nice for reporting. Okay, we'll stop sharing. So with that, oops, sorry. With that, we will turn it over to Vicky with Alberta Innovates, and she'll take it away. Vicky, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sharing my screen here. Sure that goes.
We can still see your notes there. Yeah.
All right. Hopefully that looks good for everybody now.
Perfect.
All right. So we'll give a quick introduction of who we are here at Alberta Innovates, and then I'll jump into what everybody's really interested about. So Alberta Innovates, we are a Crown corporation, and we're mandated to advance research and technology in support of sustainable economy and healthy, sustainable communities and environment. We do that through a number of different programming that we have. We also have 2 subsidiaries, Innotech and CFR, that have research space that can actually host some of the work that we talk about. And then we have programming that looks at everything from clean resources, health, investment, supporting business growth. My program that I'm representing here today is the Water Innovation Program. We sit within clean resources, where we have everything from circular economy to critical minerals, renewables, pretty broad spectrum of programming available to support innovators within the province. So what do we do exactly? We like to say that we're more than just funders. So while funding is a large part of what we do, in general, we say we help accelerate technology development, help create new knowledge for those that need it to address business practices. We provide guidance, so technical insights, business advice, diversification leadership. So we're a pretty broad spectrum organization. David mentioned the technology readiness level, and I just wanted to highlight where we support along that scale. So we're not the type of grant agency that can provide money for things like capital upgrades or operation, things that are off the shelf. That's where you go to the other sources of government grants that I think you talked about in previous sessions. Our role is really around innovation and supporting and advancing new ideas, new thoughts, new technology. And so on that technology readiness level scale, we support from TRL 3, which is that proof of concept. I have an idea, I've proven that it could work, but I really need to develop it further. All the way through what's on this chart would be from where all those paper airplanes are flying. So just before we really need to prove things out, validate our ideas, scale it up, and move it into the field, into actual application, to maybe that first commercial pilot. And that's the general area that we would provide support for. So when a project does come to us or an idea comes to us, what do we expect? What are we looking for? We want to make sure that it aligns with our mandate. So have a look at our business plan, have a look with our program priorities and strategic areas. Does your idea align with what we're trying to do? Again, as I mentioned before, we need to have an innovative or de-risking element. So we're not just funding that off-the-shelf technology. You have to have some sort of new idea about it. And that doesn't have to be just a technology piece. It could also be, we've just never done this before in this space, or there's a regulatory barrier that needs new data. And I have some examples later on. We need to have a line of sight to economic, environmental, and social benefits. For my water program in particular, we want to understand the water benefits, but we do look at that big picture for Alberta. How does this benefit Alberta beyond just your community? Well, we want to understand the benefit to your community. We also want to make sure that there is potential for this to be adopted or this information to be used by other groups or other communities across the province. Fourth, we look for end user problem owner interest, and that's where municipalities really can come in. We want to make sure that it's not just an idea or a technology that somebody's come up with and says, hey, this is a really good idea, we should develop it. We want to make sure that somebody's going to use it, that this knowledge can be applied, this technology can be adopted and have those impacts that were stated in my previous point. And then the realistic project plan. So we can have all these great things, but if we don't have a plan to execute on it, then it's not going to happen. So we want to make sure that you really understand the scope of the work that's going to be completed, the budget, and the schedule. Some common mistakes. So what happens that we see quite often when people come to work with us? So the first I'd say is overselling or underselling the project or solution. This is the best idea we've ever had. There's no problems with it, or you don't really share the true benefits of what you're trying to do. So be realistic. We understand that nothing's perfect. So don't oversell it, but make sure that we also understand the benefits and potential. The biggest one, maybe should have had this higher up, but not reading our guidelines or questions in the application. Read those. We wrote them for a reason. Have a look, understand our process, read the questions and address all of the questions in the application. Even if you say, this question doesn't apply to us, it lets us know that you've read it and you've considered it in your application. We have project advisors that are there to help every applicant that comes through the door. And in some cases, they're not used, which is fine. It's your choice, but the project advisor really help you navigate the process and make sure that you have the best application submitted and the highest likelihood of receiving funding. And then the final thing is not understanding or defining your market or that end user interest. You don't understand that true problem or how your solution is going to address the issue. And again, this is where municipalities can come in as being that end user or defining the problem for the innovator, the technology developer. So after all of that, is it worth the effort? What are the risks? My answer is yes, I think it is worth the effort. We have a pretty high success rate once you get to the full proposal stage. As I mentioned, we have project advisors that are assigned to work with every applicant. So we're there to support you and help navigate it. Others often join once we're at the table. We're often told that we were the first yes, or we were the first one to get the ball rolling on other sources of funding, other partners, really kickstarting the initiative. So we can be that initial push to get a project off the ground. Our funding reduces the cost risk and accelerates our timeline to benefits. We're non-dilutive funding, which means that you don't have to pay it back. There's no interest on it. You're not selling part of a company for a technology developer. It's truly just not quite free money, but it is grant money. And the applicant retains their IP. We don't have any ownership in IP. So that all sounds great. What are the risks with doing this? And the biggest thing I would say is we could say no. It's not a guarantee. As much as I say we have a high success rate, some projects are not chosen to be funded. So you could lose the time and effort put into submitting the application process, and it does take some time and effort, especially once you get to a full proposal stage. And we do have reporting requirements. So all projects are required to have milestone reporting, as well as a final report. We're a government agency, and we are responsible back to the public with the dollars that we spend. So what are the possible project roles for municipalities? As I mentioned before, we could be an end user or problem owner, which is often what we see with municipalities. We work quite closely with many communities on projects. You really often are the taker of the information or the user of the technology at the end. But that's not the only role. You could be an advisor and observer. You could say, we're interested in what this project is doing, and we want to help make sure it's successful. So you can sit on a committee and provide technical advice or say, or community advice to make it relevant to the end users. You might just be interested, and so you might just want to sit and watch and see what happens. So I don't know yet if we want this, but we're going to keep an eye on it. And then the last is the applicant. The municipalities absolutely can be an applicant to our process, and we have many who are. So I just wanted to touch on the art of the letter of support. And this is something that we really look for. And as David highlighted at the start in the program guide, this is really important to us to make sure that there is that problem or an end user that wants a solution being developed. And there's different types. So it could simply be a letter that says, we're interested in this topic. This is an issue for us, and confirming that. It could be that you're considering support, but you still haven't confirmed that support. So you're saying we might be able to participate, but we're going through our own approval processes. The most obvious is confirming support. So whether that's in kind, providing cash, you're a host, you're going to advise, you're confirming the role that you're going to play in the project. Or it could just be saying, we're interested in the future, in the future, if successful, we might adopt it. So what do we look for in these letters? We want to know how and why is the partner interested? Why do you want to be part of this project? Provide some specifics. What and how much support is being considered or confirmed? And how does the partner expect to benefit from or use the outcomes of the project? So are you going to use it at the end? Is this going to inform some sort of policy development or best management practice development that you're going on? And ideally, it's not a generic template. Quite often we see those that are pre-made by a partner, and then you just sign off on it. And while certain paragraphs can be templated, we want to make sure that those other top bullets that I mentioned are addressed, and those can't be templated. What are they not? And I want to emphasize this. Letters of support are not legally binding, and they're not a guarantee. So when you write these things, we're not going to necessarily hold you to it. It's all just in best interest or best intentions when they're written. And we understand that things do change. You maybe confirmed your support as a host, something happened, you can no longer host. So it's just meant to be, this is what our best intention is. So a couple quick examples here, and I don't want to use up everybody's time, but so this first one is a project with Clearwater County or hosted in Clearwater County. In this case, Magna Engineering was the applicant to Alberta Innovates, to our water innovation program. The project was looking at retrofitting an existing wastewater lagoon with their novel technology, which was a naturalized wetland system. This type of technology is not yet able to be approved through the regulatory process for use, and so there's some risk to this. So this is at commercial scale. From the role of a municipality, Clearwater County wasn't really involved with the application other than being that host, so confirming that they will be the host and providing some of the budget or majority of the budget for the project. Magna did all the application process. They worked with Alberta Innovates, and we've contracted with them for our grant funding. So the budget was a large budget because it's a large infrastructure upgrade, so $8.6 million. Clearwater County brought the most of that funding through other government grants that are designed for those capital upgrades for communities. The Alberta Innovates funding was $500K in this project. And the role of that funding was really to enable the comprehensive sample and data collection that wouldn't have otherwise been able to be funded through those other government processes or through standard budget for the community. And the importance of that extra data was to be able to demonstrate that the performance was in line with regulatory requirements. So I mentioned it's not something that is approved. Magna worked quite closely with the regulatory bodies to say, if we can build this, if it is successful, we have the data to prove it, would you give us regulatory approval? And so that's the process that they're in right now. They've built it, it's running, they're gathering the data. So far, so good. And if successful, it would receive regulatory approval and be something that other communities can use. The second example quickly, this is where the municipality was the applicant to us. So this is a project with the city of Calgary, and they had applied to us for a project that wanted to develop a one water source protection strategy. So city of Calgary had been doing a lot of water sampling and analysis across various sectors, different types of analysis. You look at different pollutants, aquatic invasive species, things like that, and their stormwater ponds and the rivers. And it was very segmented. And so what they came to us to say is, we're doing all this work. We want to look at it all together in one view. Could you support this approach? And so the municipality was the applicant to us and is who contracted with us. The money flows to them. The budget for this project was 1.29 million, and funding from us was 540,000. And again, in this case, our grant was enabling that integrated approach to work that they may have already been doing, but they needed some funding to help really bring that together. So I just would wrap up quickly, just to give you an idea of the size of our program and some of the benefits of working with us. So we have over 60 projects that are ongoing. It's a large program. We've completed over 100 projects since 2015. The total project value that we've invested is 256 million, with 75 million from Alberta Innovates. And at the bottom, I just highlight some of the benefits. So we've got 62 field pilots technologies that have been tested in the field, 94 new policies or practices influenced. So there's a lot of benefits and outcomes that come through our programming. If you want more information on those projects and some examples of the work we do, we have some knowledge sharing options. So we've got a water magazine. The second edition is actually going to be printed here this month, and the digital version is already up online. So we have two editions there. We have a project library, 2-page summary for all of our funded projects that you can go through, as well as we run a webinar series, and all of those are recorded and available online. I think these slides will be shared after, and the links are all active, so you can access those. I will wrap up there and pass it over to Isabella.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vicki. Let me pull on my screen here. Okay, hope you guys can all see that. So hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. My name is Isabella Tarasco, and I'm the Technology Investment Lead here at Emissions Reduction Alberta, coming to you from sunny Edmonton, Alberta this morning. I'll be giving you a brief introduction to Emissions Reduction Alberta, as well as some best practices for municipalities when you are writing proposals to us. So starting in 2007, Alberta was the first jurisdiction in Canada to introduce industrial carbon pricing and emissions trading system. Emissions Reduction Alberta, or ERA, was formed 2 years later as a key delivery agent responsible for reinvesting these funds into innovative technologies to accelerate emissions reductions. So our funding is sourced from Alberta's large emitters who are required to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions to meet regulated targets under Alberta's climate change regulations. So we offer a clear line of sight from these funds to the investments in the technologies and solutions that are needed to help achieve emissions reduction and economic growth. And so similar to Alberta Innovates, we do fund innovative technologies, but we do fund on the later stage of that technology readiness level scale. This means that we accelerate projects toward broader industry deployment and adoption by helping to de-risk projects that are in that critical pilot, demonstration, and scale-up stages of development. Our investments both improve the competitiveness of our existing industries by improving environmental performance and lowering costs, as well as creating some opportunities for new businesses and continued economic growth. Our vision for Alberta is to have competitive industries that deliver sustainable environmental outcomes, attract investment, and are working to build a diversified low emissions economy. And so we are anchored in the belief that success is measured in both environmental and economic terms. So reducing greenhouse gases really is the core of what we do. And it's really something that we tell applicants to focus on when they are writing proposals to us. You know, how will your project or your technology reduce emissions? But on the flip side, we do look for benefits to Albertans in the form of new products, new companies, cost reductions, new jobs, and all of those types of metrics as well. So we receive our funding from the Government of Alberta through the TIER Fund. That's the Technology, Innovation and Emissions Reduction Fund. And this is the province's industrial carbon pricing and emissions trading system. So TIER is the core of emissions management in Alberta, and it really does help industrial facilities find innovative ways to reduce emissions and invest in clean technology in order to stay competitive and reduce some of those costs. While many jurisdictions have a mechanism to invest in clean technology, our model is a little bit unique. So we are well placed to deal with the risks of innovation. Our funding is non-dilutive, so it is grant funding. This means that you do not have to give up ownership or project equity or intellectual property there. We don't want your intellectual property, so we do maintain our independence. We have a transparent and rigorous due diligence and selection process, which is designed to minimize risk. And this process is an independent process, as I mentioned. Once projects are selected for funding, we continue to provide ongoing support to proponents. So we convene resources across the innovation ecosystem, expertise, and partnerships to help improve the opportunities for success of that project that has been funded. But when projects don't progress as we expect, we do want to focus on the lessons learned. So we want to share the knowledge that we gained with others who may want to innovate more quickly as a result of their experiences. All that to say, our structure and approach allows us to respond quickly to the needs of Alberta's innovation system, carry funds from one budget year to the next, and ensure multi-year projects are possible. I will talk about that a little bit in my best practices slides coming up. We are also able to reinvest funds when projects do not progress, which is also a nice way to operate, we'll say. So a quick look at our impact. Since 2009, we've committed $937 million towards 279 projects. These projects are worth over $8 billion. And our investments are helping, for example, to measure methane emissions from satellites, transition Alberta's diesel-powered transit buses, transport trucks and trains to electric, allow drones to plant trees in dangerous and difficult to reach areas, produce things like renewable energy and high quality fertilizer from food waste. All of these different types of projects, we do fund a number of different technologies across several sectors. But it is important to note that we do require a one-to-one investment from private sources. So public funding, we know, is not enough to accelerate these new technologies. Industry needs to have, it needs to demonstrate that demand. Historically, we've always significantly exceeded this requirement. Every dollar invested by us, almost $8 is invested by private funders. This is important to ensure industry and the market see that there is a market demand for the technology. So I will say that before you feel the need to reach the 8-to-1 ratio, our average is probably about more along the lines of 3-to-1 for several of our projects. Job creation is also very important to the province. Our economic impact analysis suggests that our investments will generate over 35,300 person-year jobs per year by 2027 and contribute just over $5.4 billion to Alberta's GDP. So a little bit of a summary of our municipal funding. These are all projects within our portfolio that cite municipalities as lead applicants. So take this information with a grain of salt. We do have many, many more projects with municipalities that are key partners or key delivery partners. But as you can see on the screen there, the majority of this funding is dedicated to the transportation sector, followed by landfills and waste management, biofuels and bioproducts, and some other sectors such as building and electricity generation. So again, this is a small subset of funding that we provide to municipalities, since they may actually be involved in several other projects as key delivery partners as well. So how do we make our decisions and decide which technologies to invest in? We developed a technology roadmap to help guide our investment decisions and inform our portfolio mix as one of the tools to help us do this. The TRM essentially serves as a catalyst for our technology and solution investments, and it is all-encompassing in terms of different sectors within Alberta. This is a living document. The most recent edition was published, I believe, in 2022, and we are starting work on the 5th edition as we speak. And we do work with government, industry, investors, and innovators to help develop the technology roadmap, ensure its accuracy, and it accounts for uncertainty in several factors, such as the pace of technology development and global decarbonization. It's also intended to contribute to and align with the broader innovation ecosystem and common environmental and innovation goals, both within the province as well as around Alberta. So there is strong alignment to the Alberta Energy Emissions Reduction and Energy Development Plan. And the TRM also outlines the right mix of short, medium, and long-term technologies that ultimately help Alberta realize its environmental and economic goals. Along with our technology roadmap, we also have our business plan. It is available on our website, and so feel free to take a look at that. We do encourage applicants to look at our TRM as well as our business plan before and during when they are writing their proposals to us. But the key thing we're sharing here from our business plan is future funding areas. So we will always signal what ERA hopes to invest in the coming 3 years. These areas include industrial transformation, fuels of the future, advanced materials, and next-gen carbon capture. And all of these are planned from now until 2026. We do update our 3-year rolling business plan annually, so please stay tuned for the next edition shortly. But similar to the technology roadmap, this does involve insight from government, industry, and innovators as well. So our technology roadmap and our business plan guide our investments. And so you may ask what happens from there. Projects are selected primarily through competitive funding opportunities, such as our recently announced Accelerating Hydrogen Challenge, where successful projects were announced together with Alberta Innovates and the Government of Alberta just this morning at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention, which I will mention does include 3 lead applicant municipalities who are all working on different projects to advance hydrogen ecosystem in Alberta. So you can take a look at some of the media releases there. Ultimately, funded projects for each call are selected through ERA's competitive review process. So we have a team of experts in science, engineering, business development, commercialization, financing, and greenhouse gas quantification all conduct independent, rigorous, and transparent review. This process is overseen by a fairness monitor. And so you can see there we have 2 intake stages. The first is an expression of interest, where this is open to all types of applicants. We ask for an expression of interest, typically about 8 to 10 pages, basically detailing what your project is, what are some of the benefits, and how you will execute. This is then followed by a full project proposal stage. So if you are successful in that first round, you will be invited to a full project proposal stage. This is a little bit more detailed. It's about a 40-page document with accompanying appendices, including a budget appendices, a budget appendix, GHG appendix, and others that we ask for. So all full project proposals are, once they are submitted, they are evaluated by, again, an independent team of review experts, and they're invited to submit a presentation to an entire evaluation team. So the presentation is a way for you to talk about your proposal, fill in any gaps, and answer any questions that the review team may have. This culminates with an in-depth review meeting where all projects are discussed in detail. And then a recommendation is brought forward to ERA's Board of Directors for consideration. And so I will mention that all of our funding decisions are made by our Board of Directors. After these funding decisions are made, we will notify applicants and enter into legal agreements with successful applicants that details the terms and obligations of each party. Our funding is distributed on a milestone by milestone basis. So this is important. Even though it is grant funding, we do need to see the work done on a milestone basis before we will produce or reimburse any of that funding. At the end of the project, you're all required to produce a final outcomes report. This is ultimately shared publicly for the broader benefit of Alberta. And then the final thing to note again about our process is that the entire process is overseen by an independent fairness monitor that reports directly to our Board of Directors. So I'm going to talk about a few best practices for municipalities when it comes to preparing proposals for our funding competitions. The first and most important best practice is always implied, but it seems as though applicants do take the least amount of time here. Please read the guidelines thoroughly and read the prompts given in the template. This will really help you understand what we need from you, and it'll help you create a bit of a checklist that will guide you in pulling your project together. Alongside this is taking time to plan your proposal. So by following these prompts, including the details that make sense for you for your project, you should be able to create a cohesive, compelling, and easy to follow story. Try to avoid repeating facts, avoid using marketing jargon throughout your proposal. Reviewers really want to know the history of your efforts, why you're applying to ERA now, and how you'll contribute to the outcomes of the call. And how you're prepared to execute the project. While you're planning your project, you should have a sense of the technologies that you need. So for example, potential feedstock, offtake agreements, and other partners to help you successfully execute the project. So we encourage you to engage with these technology providers and partners early. You can involve academia and other post-secondaries where you can. We always look for other ancillary benefits that a project might have, including training or involving post-secondaries. And so it's great to just demonstrate your line of sight towards involving these different types of partners. So be clear on the technology providers you're looking for. A good way to do this is engaging with them through your networks or even at conferences and events. A few of them I have listed up here, ones that ERA is participating or heavily involved in. But again, please engage with partners early because it can be quite a hindrance to projects moving ahead. But on the flip side, a problem that we often see with municipal projects is a long list of project partners, which often make it difficult to understand the project structure. So as you can imagine, coordinating five people from the same organization can be difficult, but when you have a list of over 10 organizations with multiple people listed, reviewers will want to know that the project structure is clearly defined. So assign responsibilities and decision makers to the project. Essentially, who will be the ones responsible for managing and overseeing the work, and how will each of these team members be involved? So please make sure you are detailing this in the proposal. Otherwise, it's just an extra step that you'll have to deal with during the contracting phase. So now we're getting to sources of funding. As I mentioned, we require a one-to-one match on our funding. We do not match any other provincial, federal, or international government funding, and typically require a one-to-one match with private funding. All that to say, we can match funding provided by municipalities, but we do like to see some of those private industry funds in there as well. So that's why the partnerships are very important when it comes to your projects. On that note, it's also very important to see where additional funds are coming from and whether there are any barriers to receiving these funds. So we have specific requirements on when projects begin once they are granted funding, and when projects end. Typically, it's about 3-year timeline. So for municipalities, it's important that we see any city council approval timelines noted in your project, or if funding is committed. It would just be great if you could provide us with details on the funding program, just so that we can verify that and so that reviewers have comfort in committed funds. When it comes to proposals, applicants always talk up their technology. Sometimes they mention that funding is the only barrier to broad deployment, and if so, that's really not what ERA funds are for. ERA funds are to de-risk critical innovation. So we want applicants to be realistic about your project risks and that you've thought through mitigation strategies. So, for example, if there's a risk of not having enough of a particular feedstock for a biofuel project, what happens to the project? We don't want to see projects paralyzed midway through, requesting extensions with really no line of sight towards completing their milestone or their scoped project. All ERA projects are on a 3-year time frame, so projects do need to be wrapped up after that time. So please be mindful of project timelines when you're writing your proposal, all the way through to project execution. And then finally, please be realistic about your project benefits. If you tell us your project is going to create 5,000 jobs in 3 years, we are definitely going to ask you about the methodology you have to prove it. Often these inflated benefits, without sound references, will definitely work against the applicant. My second last point is around knowledge sharing. So ERA is in the business of advancing innovation, and one way that happens is through disseminating the lessons learned from the projects that we fund. In the proposals, sometimes we see municipalities trying to work on their own, or not knowing where to start from a lessons learned perspective. There are likely others in the space who can benefit from learning about your project and vice versa. So you can adopt certain elements from other projects that you have seen that are currently working in the space, and others can adopt certain technologies potentially within their own communities or lines of business. So please tell us how you'll share what you're learning with other municipalities and with the general public. To us, it's always important that we continue to educate others on the benefits that these projects have. Finally, my last point is around communication. So Vicky mentioned this as well in her presentation, but we do offer guidance at both stages of our application process, as well as throughout the project. So in our application process, we have a formal proposal advisor assigned to each project during the full project proposal stage. So we encourage you to please take advantage of this resource. We know it is optional, but it really does help prepare you for what reviewers might think about your proposal, any potential gaps. Please take advantage of these resources. I cannot stress that enough. And reach out if you have any questions about our application process. Early on, we're always quite responsive and happy to help you. We can respond via email or set up a quick meeting if that's best for you. So there you have it. I know it sounds simple enough, but we do know it takes a lot to go through our process, and writing a proposal takes practice. We're always looking to fund high quality projects with widespread greenhouse gas reductions and economic benefits. So we look forward to seeing your projects coming through our next funding call, which may be announced in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Great job, Isabel and Vicky. Thank you. Jeff, are you going to run the Q&A?
So I'm just looking, nothing in the Q&A box yet. So maybe David, if you got one to start us off with, and everyone else in the chat, if you do have questions, again, please throw those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I've got 3 points. And the first one is I've attended a number of these talks, and I'm always amazed that usually the number one advice is read the program guidelines. I think they should change the name from grant writing to grant reading and writing. Like that should be the name of it, because yeah, it's people tend to speed up. It seems like people get excited. They get, you know, as you want to get excited, but you go too fast. And I'm glad you both brought that up. My question for either of you is around the word realistic. And I think human nature is, oh, I'm competing against someone, I need to embellish. And so could you talk about what that looks like in the writing of the applications of being realistic? Like words on the page, like what do you want to see? If either of you could respond to the realistic component, particularly as it pertains to the writing, I would appreciate it.
Sure, I can start there. So realistic doesn't mean not sharing how good your idea is, how good the project is going to be. It's about giving the honest information. If you embellish it too far, we see that. The reviewers are all have a scientific background or business background. They're experts in the area and they're assigned to the project for reasons. They're familiar with it. They're going to see through it. And usually if you oversell it, we don't get a good feel for how, for the actual project. What are the real benefits? If it is a good project, it will sell itself. We can see the benefits as well. And so simply just stating it. We expect to see, this is how it's going to be used within my community. This is the benefits that we are going to see. And we think these are the benefits that others will see if they were to adopt it. So it's just simply stating it in the application, keeping it simple, and it should speak for itself.
Yeah, and maybe I could just add on to that, and maybe go a little bit deeper. We look for environmental benefits. So from a greenhouse gas perspective, we look at economic benefits. So how many jobs are being created? What's the impact to the province? And ancillary benefits. So that can be societal benefits, diversity benefits, and community-based benefits. And so when we look at our environmental benefits, in terms of quantifying the carbon reductions, we encourage applicants to use our greenhouse gas verification team. So they are available to help you with your proposal. Other than that, you know, use existing references, established quantification methodologies. You know, in your plan, you should include details on how you'll collect the specific data. You should include specific metrics in there. And then, you know, in terms of other environmental benefits, sometimes the water and nature-based benefits are a little bit harder to quantify. So it's important that these are consistent. Try to communicate the importance of why your project is looking at specific types of benefits. Don't just list a bunch of kind of high-level ones. You know, why is it important to your project? Moving on to the economic benefits portion. So sometimes proponents focus too much on the details of the project itself rather than the broader impact. So read the guidelines. What is the overall scope of our competition hoping to reach, and how does your project fit with that? So communicating on long-term impact to the economy, for example, permanent jobs created, any innovation to the market, present a multiplier. So if you are giving us jobs numbers, how did you come up with those jobs? So be specific about some of those jobs, what types of industries they're in, what kind of jobs they are, and then project risks. So again, I can't stress this enough. There are always risks to a project. You should be aware of what those are. So for example, are there technical risks, construction, finance risks? So please detail these and detail what the plan of action is. So perhaps you want to include stage gates in your proposal. If there are significant risks that you may not be able to move past, these are always great to see that you have thought of those. Finally, if we get to the ancillary benefits, so society benefits, it's required thinking about broader effects that governments are interested in. For example, are there any links to public health or public education, infrastructure? These can sometimes be difficult to quantify, but communicating any links to this is always helpful. Community-based risks, so where's your project taking place? Is it taking place in a rural environment? Are there aspects of the project that will ensure community-based programs and systems are enhanced or supported? For example, if you're hoping to seek support from local community groups, how will you do this? What's your engagement strategy? How will you secure the continued support of these groups throughout the projects? So will you involve these groups, whether it's through ownership, whether it's through training opportunities, that kind of thing. So thanks, David. Thanks, Vicki.
I was just going to jump in very quickly because we talked a lot about the benefits and being realistic about those. But the other part we talked about in our presentations was being realistic about your project plan. And so I think in some cases, applicants are worried that the project seems too long or the budget seems too high, and they want to make it seem more of a fit or more fund worthy, I guess. But that's where we get caught sometimes where you say this is a 2-year project, but really you need a 3rd year, or you should have asked for a little bit more money, or the budget should have been a bit higher. Look at those risks that Isabella talked about and be realistic about your plan. If you need an extra year, put in the extra year. We'd much rather see a slightly longer project and a slightly higher budget than a project that ends up needing 2 or 3 extensions, goes over budget. You don't have the funding to meet the requirements of the project. So think about it, give yourself a little bit of time. Things never go as planned within research. We know that. So provide those buffers within your schedule budget as well. And this all sounds a bit overwhelming, which is again why both of us have advisors for applicants, and we are here to walk you through it and help you figure that out.
Yeah,
Thank you, David. Do you want to finish with your questions, or you want me to take one from the
just
box
yeah,
here?
one follow-up, just because it pertains to Isabella, because I think if I'm sitting in a municipality and I'm at my I'm at my desk and someone comes in the door and they're like, yeah, we're going to reduce X amount of emissions, it's like, I don't know. Like, you say it's going to reduce that much. I don't know if you know what you. So does Emission Reductions Alberta offer that type of service that says at some part of the process, like they can, or direct them to be like, to quantify the actual reduction? Because that to me is like really, that would be a really tough one for an applicant or a partner or project partner.
Yeah, so I would say yes and no. So we don't, it's not something that we, I guess, offer. We do, in that we work with Brightspot, who is a greenhouse gas quantification and verification specialist. And we do have a greenhouse gas team lead here in Emissions Reduction Alberta, who will liaise with all the projects, connect you to Brightspot, and they can help you out with your measurement and monitoring plan throughout the project. So from when your proposal begins, all throughout the project, they do look at your project activities, the scope of your project, making sure the methodologies are in line with the methodologies that we use as well. So we definitely encourage you to reach out to them as soon as possible.
Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, so from the chat box, Mickey puts in there, great presentations. I'm the research director at a tribal college, Red Crow Community College of the Blood Tribe, Blackfoot. What opportunities are available to Indigenous communities? I didn't hear specific mention, but I apologize if I missed it.
For Alberta Innovates, we work with Indigenous communities. They are able to be applicants, partners, the same as other municipalities and applicants. Again, it goes with everything we've been saying to date. Is we have our project advisors to work with the applicants to make sure that we're partnering on the project. We can help facilitate going through each step. And so there's really, we don't have a limit on who can apply to us, as long as they're able to enter into a contract for funding at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I would echo Vicky's response. We do have a couple projects that are Indigenous-led projects, and we are open to all lead applicants. Our concept of innovation is our definition differs, I guess. So innovation can be, first of kind in the country, first of kind in Alberta, but we also, realize that it can be first of kind on reserve as well, or in different industries. So we do accept all types of applicants. As Vicky mentioned, we do have proposal advisors and project advisors who help the applicant throughout the process as well.
Thank you. And Mickey says he'll follow up in the future, and they have another meeting to attend. So that there's no other questions in the Q&A box. So David, I don't know if you have anything else you want to raise or?
I just wanted to encourage people, like, look, we went deep, pretty deep today. I mean, you're talking about piloting a new technology, but it's something you can do. Like it's possible. If you're on this, like you have people here that can help you. And I always say grants are uphill, you know, they're uphill, but it's a tremendous opportunity. So like seize the moment. So thank you to everyone who presented here today. I think it's amazing, exciting that you're so accessible. And I just want to tell people, you know, you're on the call, like just do it, like, you know, go for it. And I wish you all the best. And the recording will be available too, by the way. So you can, my YouTube channel will be on ABmunis website as well. And that was in the chat. So just so you know, it's there. In terms of the slides itself, if you want the slides, because I don't see them, it's probably easiest just to email them to me if you're interested in them, unless you can attach them now. But I don't do that just in case you attach the wrong thing. I don't want to pressure you. Just email it to me and I can, anyone who wants them can come back to me. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do. My email's in the chat.
Perfect. Well, looking at I had no other questions in the box, and we're just about 11 o'clock. So we can
Perfect.
probably conclude for today. And just want to thank everyone for your time today and your attention. Hope very much appreciate the presentations from Emissions Reduction Alberta and Alberta Innovates, and hope participants found it valuable. Any closing comments? Anyone else?
No, thanks so much.
Thanks for having us today.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See ya. Bye-bye.